All right, what is going on? So today we're going to talk a little bit about drop chord voicings. And if you've followed along at all, you know I'm a big proponent of the cage system, but this is another way to kind of look at chords. And I always get a lot of questions about these. What is this drop chord system? I don't get it. A lot of them do parallel the cage system, a lot of these voicings. So you could think of them as an E shape in some cases or an A shape. But the drop 2 system is kind of a chord system on the guitar that solves some of the problems that the guitar has as far as limitations. So on a piano, it's a little bit easier to do some of the inversions and stuff like that. On the guitar, some of the inversions are really tough. And basically what it is, let's say for example, we take a C major 7th chord. Okay, this is just like your garden variety C major 7. As a matter of fact, it's grammatically correct. So you got root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th, C major 7. Now, what the drop system does is it says, let's take one of these top notes and drop it down an octave to get an inversion, okay? But if I was going to do a true inversion of this chord, let's say I was going to go, 3, 5, 7, 1, which would be a true inversion of that chord. It's basically, it's unattainable. It's not even worth trying. You might be able to get some of the notes, but it would be really difficult. So instead, we take one of the notes and we drop it in the bass, and we get a different voicing of that chord. So if I go from the top down and I drop the second note down, you just kind of count it as 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to drop the second note. So if I drop this G note down, I would get something like this. And that would give me a drop 2, because that was the second note I dropped down. And now it's also a second inversion of this chord. So kind of solves some of the limitations that we have on the guitar. And what it does is it opens up a whole lot of chord voicings for different options for chords. It gives you a lot to choose from, so to speak, right? Let's try another one. Let's say, for example, instead of dropping the second note down, I drop the third note down, which in this case would be E. So I drop this down an octave, let's say to right here. Okay, now that would be a drop 3, and it's a first inversion. So I've got kind of a root position here. Then I have a drop 2, second inversion, and then I have a drop 3, first inversion. So just different ways of getting some of these chord voicings. Visually, usually the drop 2 is more of a cluster. They're more on consecutive strings. So like for example, this drop 2 voicing here is all on consecutive strings. And with drop 3 voicings, there's going to be a string in between. There's like a little cluster of notes. Like right here is the root, the 5th, and the 7th. They're all on adjacent strings, but then the 3rd skips a string. And that's usually a pretty good indication it's a drop 3 versus, say, a drop 2. And you can also do things like drop 2 and 4, which I will get into. But for now, let's just look at the drop 2 voicings, the very typical drop 2 voicings. These are root position voicings. And like I said, some of these you might already know. They might already be coming from the cage system. Maybe you learned it that way, and it will parallel a lot of those shapes. So if let's say we're in the key of G, and we're just going to do the harmonized G major scale with a 6-string root, a drop 2 would be something like this. So you see you have the root here, the 5th is here, the 7th, and the 3rd, and those are all on consecutive strings. So it's a pretty good indication that it's a drop 2. Now if I put this 5th here, this D note, if I put it up here, now it would be a drop 3 as indicated by the space between the strings there. You got a cluster of notes here, then you have a open string that you should mute, and then the root down here. Drop 3, drop 2. So what's the difference? Well, it's the same chord, but you know, it's a different voicing, has a different sound to it, right? So it gives you different ways to play the same chord, and you can make musical choices based on the style of music you're playing or the song or situation that you're playing. And just gives you lots of different voicings for chords. So first thing that you want to do is you want to just kind of run through all of the different voicings you might see here. So this is a major seventh. Now I'm going to need a dominant seventh as my 5 chord. So I just lower the F sharp to F, and that gives me a dominant seventh. And you know, these are all kind of E-shaped bar chords. So if you're using the Cage system, you might think of them as pattern 4, right? But they're all drop 2. And then if I lower the third, this B note, if I lower it to B flat, I can just do that by picking up my finger here, letting the bar kind of take the wheel. That'll give me a minor seventh. And then if I lower the D to D flat, that would give me a minor 7 flat 5. So we've got major seventh, then dominant seventh, then minor seventh, and then minor 7 flat 5. And I think it's always good to run through those 4 iterations of chords because those are the 4 different chord types in your harmonized major scale. Now once you do that, you want to apply them to the different roots of the major scale. So if I'm in the key of G, the first chord will be G major 7. The second chord will be A minor 7. Third chord is B minor 7. And then C major 7. Then D dominant 7. Then E minor 7. And then maybe I'll go down here to do the minor 7 flat 5. F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Now to my ear, I don't use these particular voicings a ton because they're a little too low and dark sounding. I find that on the guitar, especially when you're comping and playing in a band situation, I like a little bit brighter voicings for that type of scenario because that's kind of nice where the guitar lives. But we can also apply these to 5th string roots. So let's say, for example, we're in the key of C. So this would be C major 7th here. Now from our Cage system, this would be a pattern number 2. But again, it's drop 2 because the top note is the 3rd. The next note down would be the root, but that's the one we're putting in the bass. So there's like my arpeggio if I was to come down from the top note. Now this is without repeating any notes. So, and it's pretty obvious because they're all clustered on adjacent strings. Now I could take this G note and I could catch it here with my bar and play. That would be drop 3, right? But we'll get into those. We're just going to talk about drop 2s today. Okay, so this would be a C major 7 drop 2. If you pick up your middle finger here and make the B a B flat, that makes it dominant, then minor 7, and then minor 7 flat 5. So you want to run through those. Now once you have those, you can run them up the harmonized scale. Let's say I'll just do it in C. You've got C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, E minor 7, flat 5, and then back to your C again. Okay, so we've got drop 2s on the lower strings, then we got drop 2s from the 5th string root. Let's look at a 4th string root. So let's say we'll do it in the key of F. So normally this triad chord here will be kind of like a D-shaped chord. So compared to the Cage system, these would be pattern 5s. But again, these are drop 2s. They're all on consecutive strings. So here's our major 7th shape. We've got a root, 5th, major 7th, 3rd. If we drop the major 7 to a flat 7, we get dominant. If we drop our major 3rd down a half step to a minor 3rd, that gives us minor 7th. And then if we drop the 5th down, minor 7 flat 5. Once again, those are our 4 chords of our harmonized major scale. So let's go ahead and run it up the F major scale. So we got F major 7, then the 2 chord G minor 7, and the 3 chord A minor 7, then B flat major 7, then C dominant 7, then D minor 7, then E minor 7 flat 5, and then back to your F major 7. Now, like I said, you might already know these chords. Maybe you didn't realize their drop voicing or how that worked, but you can parallel some of these chords with the Cage system at first. As time goes on, we can start talking about inversions and things like that, and that's a whole different story then. It might be a little bit harder, but you can still kind of use the Cage system to visualize some of the more, trickier chords and versions in this drop chord system. This is just bare bones basic. Okay. So what you want to do, obviously, is practice them on different string roots, but what you can do is start to combine them together, and that will shorten the distance of your chord scale on the guitar. So for example, if I start with my drop 2, let's say I'm in the key of G, I could play drop 2 here for my 1 chord, and then I could go to A minor here for my 2 chord. Now instead of going all the way up here, I could go to B minor here for my 3 chord, and then C major 7 here, then maybe up to D. And then instead of going to E minor here, I could go to drop 2 E minor here. And then F sharp minor 7 flat 5. And that kind of, keeps you within a certain register on the guitar. So I think that's a good way to practice them, by kind of combining them together. Now I could do that here. Let's say I start here, and again, I'm just focusing only on drop 2s. That's kind of my goal here. I just want to stick to the drop 2 sound. So I got G major 7 here, then I could play A minor 7 here, and then B minor 7, C major 7, D dominant 7, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5. So if I was starting from this shape chord, I could still kind of do the same thing. So those are our drop 2 voicings and a little introduction to the drop chord system. Once again, basically what we're doing is we're taking one of the notes of the grammatically correct 7th chord and we're dropping it down, and it will create a different inversion in some cases. In some cases, of course, you can play it from the root, which is what we're doing right now. So that's our drop 2s. If you can see how you can compare those to the Cage system, even better. I kind of like to work the 2 systems together because the Cage system is very simple. The drop system starts to get a little complicated, and I'll keep chipping away at that. But for now, just get those down if you don't have them down already, and see how they compare to your Cage system, and kind of keep that thread going as I introduce more and more of these voicings. Keep that Cage system in the background. Even though technically it's a different system, if you kind of parallel the 2 systems together, visually on the guitar, it'll help you find more of these chord voicings, especially when they get more complicated. These are pretty simple. So, all right, go ahead and chew on that. I'll see you next time around, and cheerio.